Sorry, we're just going to take a moment here to readjust the slides and start you off on what we hope it will be an exemplar of a case situation where we have actually employed some of the strategies that you've been hearing about all day, and certainly some that pertain directly to our previous speaker. I'm Jean Bartels. I'm the Vice President of Academic Affairs and Provost at Georgia Southern University. Ken Boyd, who is the Vice President for Academic Affairs at Savannah Tech, will join me in the presentation because it's our two institutions that have actually joined together to do something to address a very significant regional need. You've heard all of this before, but let me just set context by saying that much of the work that we have done in Articulation started years ago, actually, and preceded, actually, even the national efforts that were starting to look at the kind of shortages in post-secondary degrees that the nation was going to suffer. And as you have heard, from 2010 on, we've been talking about having a need for 22 million additional post-secondary degreed individuals and falling far short of that by at least 3 million. At the state level, and Complete College Georgia is our emphasis here, we've discovered that 60% of the jobs that we're going to anticipate in 2020 actually will require that kind of advanced preparation, and only 42% of our young adults, at least, are going to be prepared to be able to do that particular work. I said this partnership started actually years ago, and I will just give a short rendition of Georgia Southern's move forward. We actually were involved in a Georgia Work Ready regional grant years ago. This actually precedes my time at Georgia Southern even, when we decided to address a regional need that we had, particularly with the ports, with the transportation efforts that were in our area, and many of the other regional needs that indicated the need for logistics. Georgia Southern started at that time a baccalaureate program in logistics. It's since moved from a baccalaureate to include a master's program and now a PhD in logistics and transportation operations. That particular work has just gone on. We've just been having a grand time with that until lately, when we discovered that there were others that maybe should link into this, and Complete College Georgia initiatives really gave us an opportunity to do that. As all good practices happen, we started by having communication between provosts. I think that's where all good ideas start, personally, just saying. But we recognized the fact that we had a very excellent logistics program at the technical college level, very close to us, both of us in the same region, addressing the same economic development needs, and it was time that we probably had a conversation about what should happen there. I'd like to say that as I listened to the Go Build Georgia discussion, that the logistics program addresses every single one of those areas and probably is a very good case exemplar of how you actually move into addressing the great shortage needs. Once we had a conversation, we decided that we would discuss our interests and start to plan forward in terms of our potential for developing a program Articulation to make a seamless transition for students who might want to move from their associate degree on up through the baccalaureate and through into their PhDs, should they would desire that. We studied the regional workforce and economic development needs, and we began to study also what potential we had in our own systems, and then assuring that we didn't have potential duplication of this particular effort. We certainly didn't, so we proceeded forward. And I'm going to turn now to Ken and let him talk a little bit about our initial groundwork.
Thank you, Jean. This journey started with the award of a grant from the Governor's Office for Workforce Development, so it's very appropriate that Tricia led off our presentation this afternoon. It initially involved Ogeechee Technical College, and then involved Altamaha and Savannah Technical Colleges and Georgia Southern University and 7 different counties along the east coast of the state. The approach was holistic, involving logistics-oriented businesses, civic and community organizations, and secondary school districts. The Georgia Department of Education was a partner and assisted with developing a high school career pathway that was put into place this year. Training involved teachers, administrators, and counselors. The logistics industry as a whole was a key player, including the Georgia Ports Authority, the Georgia Logistics Innovation Center, and the Savannah Traffic Club, an organization comprised of members from the logistics industry. Many jobs were analyzed through regularly held meetings to understand what skills, knowledge, and abilities were required so that we could capture that in this program. This slide represents our highway or our interstate model. The pathway is truly seamless, starting from high school through doctorate level in the field of logistics at Georgia Southern University, as Gene just alluded to. A student can exit the highway with an academic credential and move into jobs requiring the skills learned during the learning of that credential. And just to pause here is that I just will say over and over again how important the businesses were, because those were the ones at the table telling us what those knowledge, skills, and abilities were so that we could build that into the curriculums. A student can get back on the highway, travel to another exit, earning another credential and another position, all building upon each other for a lifelong career. As businesses correlate this building block approach to their organizational structures, it could prove to be a very useful professional development and career building tool for them. There are several excellent reports, many of which we've seen in other presentations. This is but one of them. Studies outlining the importance of logistics to Georgia. Logistics was identified early on, and the need for academic programs was evident to many leaders in government, academics, and the logistics industry itself. The understood goal was a qualified and educated workforce. As mentioned earlier, the Georgia Ports Authority has been an important and active member of this initiative. These statistics only point out a couple of the highlights of what the GPA presents and accomplishes. It is essential to note that the GPA affects all of Georgia, not just Savannah, Brunswick, and the east coast of the state, although selfishly we benefit in many ways. Logistics is a statewide enterprise needing our graduates throughout the state. Logistics is a large industry comprising warehousing, truck, sea, and rail operations, and affects state, national, and international businesses. In the Savannah Technical College and Georgia Southern University area of influence, we have 2 rail carriers, 2 major interstates, the Savannah River, a large military base, and an international airport. The need for academic programs educating the logistics workforce in our area was obvious and will continue to be so for years to come.
So we'll very briefly tell you something that's probably not a mystery to any of you, because I know many of you sitting here have entered into similar agreements, but we thought we would like to just give you some sense of what our agreement actually looked like and what kinds of things we paid particular attention to. And these were particularly important because some of them really had to do with preserving and being true to missions that we had as institutions while addressing very similar needs as well. In our pre-agreement collaboration stage, and I'm sorry that this looks so small on the screen because it was huge in terms of the kind of work that was done. Obviously, we had to first verify that we each had the appropriate accreditations, the appropriate permissions to transfer degrees, that things were acceptably transferable between our 2 institutions, and as clearly they were. Both of us carried the same accreditations, and as part of the systems within Georgia had articulation agreements in terms of core learning and some of those other things. The majority of the work took place on the part of the faculty, who reviewed each program and each curriculum. The program heads and the faculty themselves actually studied where the articulation points were, what kinds of things were being taught in each area, so that we didn't see duplication in terms of a student moving forward, either in the classes they needed to take, or sometimes even the content and experiences that they would have. And then we discussed and negotiated what our actual articulation agreement would look like. We agreed on a number of things, and first off agreed in principle. Our programs, we really believe, needed to articulate and be designed in a way that would minimize the loss of credits and course duplication for students. And I think if we, as we've been working with Complete College Georgia, that's increasingly an important factor in any articulation agreement. We both had to come into the relationship and the collaboration as equal partners, and respecting the contributions that each of us were going to make to the development of the student towards graduation. And both of us had to also, and this is, I think, the critically important part, had to stay very committed to and maintain the integrity of each of our programs and institutional missions. With the excitement of doing articulations and with expanding programming in both of our systems, schools, I think the tendency or the desire to quickly jump in and to create a degree that we think would be really beneficial can be really thwarted, if you will, by the kind of duplication that doesn't help. So we were very conscious that we were going to make sure that we were building on each other's strengths while we weren't just duplicating for the sake of duplicating additional programming. We also had agreement on how we would communicate. We would coordinate our publications and announcements concerning how we affiliated and the changes in the relationships so that students and consumers, employers would understand exactly what it was that was available and how they could enter into it for themselves. We both decided to disseminate information to interested and qualified students, making sure that they understood, again, what the opportunities were, and both of us would agree to advise and counsel our prospective students to assure that they understood and could negotiate and navigate the systems well. And then last, we looked at or we made a promise to each other, I guess, that would be a logical promise, that we would maintain all applicable program and institutional accreditations, including those that were related to the regional accrediting body, SACs, and make sure that our professional bodies that ran or that oversaw our programs agreed that those accreditations for the programs should stay intact. Again, critical to assure that what a student is engaging in isn't something that will be diminished by a lack of those accreditation standards.
This articulation agreement took full advantage of the 27 courses that were agreed upon by USG and TCSG for articulation, and that has come up in numerous other speakers' presentations, not only last year when we kicked off Complete College, but also already this morning. Approval processes were followed by the two systems, including SAC COC approval. And as Jean just alluded to, that is essential not just to a logistics program, but to any program that any one of us undertakes. Graduates of Savannah Technical College enter Georgia Southern University with 75 earned credits, an Associate of Science in Logistics Management, and the best start as a third-year student as possible, working towards their Bachelor of Science degree. As with any program, good, thorough advisement is essential to student success. That's a challenge that we have taken on not only in this program, but any other program, particularly within our system, as we have more Associate of Science degree, as well as our Associate of Applied Science degrees. Savannah Technical College is committed to that, as is Georgia Southern. An important aspect of student success that's perhaps not so obvious is a term that I learned while we were going through this process called reverse transfer. There are several different meanings to reverse transfer. The one that I learned and we put into place with this particular degree applies to students who have been directly accepted at Georgia Southern or, in fact, any four-year USG institution, and for whatever reason somehow start slowing down. They're not quite making it. So rather than just seeing them drift apart and not have that retention standard and not have that graduate, why don't we put them back in a TCSG school, let them apply the credits that they've already earned at the four-year school, finish up with a two-year degree, and then they have a choice. They can either immediately enter into the workforce, or perhaps as a second time, they can reapply to the four-year institution and continue on with their baccalaureate degree. Just as industry job requirements change, so should we as colleges and universities reviewing our programs and courses. I believe our two institutions are ready for that because how we included the logistics industry early in the process and maintained contact with them continuously. We will market and promote this program together, graduating the students this industry needs and requires.
And that brings us very quickly to the end of our presentation, but we do want to make sure that we think through in terms of future initiatives to promote our programs, to connect our graduates to industry, and to access all additional opportunities. And we will, I think, now pause so that we can have reflection, and we'll leave our question and answer period to the end of that. But we'd like to thank you for listening to what we think is a very successful model for articulating based on regional needs of an area.